The medical station Valtheris 9 floated silently above the shattered moon of Velkar. Inside its cold, white halls, a group of alien doctors stood around a small, glowing pod. The child inside was barely alive. She was no ordinary child. She was something new, something the galaxy didn't understand. Her skin shimmered with both the rough scales of the Raskari and the soft glow of the Tharn. Her blood was at war with itself, reacting violently to every attempt to stabilize her. The doctors had tried everything: Tharn healing waves, Raskari regenerative nanites, even advanced Terran techniques. None of it worked. Every scan gave different results. Her organs weren't failing, they were changing, evolving in unpredictable ways. Ezor, the lead physician, stepped forward. A tall Krathi with 6 long arms and silver-tipped antennae, he pressed a few buttons on the console and let out a low sigh. Her system is collapsing. Our medicine cannot help her. We must let her go. No one argued. The child had no name. No records. She was the result of something shameful, something both the Raskari and the Tharn pretended had never happened. Her very existence was a problem, a symbol of 2 enemy species doing the unthinkable, mixing blood. There was no protocol for her care, no rights to protect her, no species willing to claim her as their own. One by one, the doctors left the chamber, leaving only the hum of machines behind. The lights dimmed to sleep mode, as if giving up too. But one person stayed. Mara Jennings stood at the edge of the pod, her reflection cast in the glass. Human, brown skin weathered by years of war and wandering. Short-cropped hair, eyes tired but sharp. She wasn't a doctor. She wasn't even supposed to be on this level. But Mara had fought too many battles to walk away from one more life on the edge of death. She reached out and gently touched the pod's glass. Inside, the child twitched. Her tiny face scrunched in pain, but her little fingers clenched as if grabbing at something unseen. Mara had seen that before, in soldiers who didn't want to die, in orphans who clung to hope even after everything had been taken from them. Not today, Mara whispered. She pulled up the girl's biometrics on her handheld and downloaded them all: blood scans, organ patterns, synaptic maps. She took everything she could. Then she turned and left, moving quickly through back halls and staff-only lifts. Her footsteps echoed like gunfire in the quiet corridors. By the time anyone noticed she was missing, she had already reached the docking bay. Her ship, the Jenny Wren, was an old Terran hauler patched together from scrap and memory. It wasn't fast, it wasn't smart, but it was hers. She activated the stealth shield she'd illegally installed years ago during her smuggling days. She slid the child's pod into the med cradle, strapped herself in, and ignited the engines. Security. Alarms howled as station drones lifted into the air, weapons armed. A voice boomed over the comms. Unauthorized departure, surrender immediately. Mara didn't answer. She flipped the Wren hard left, dodging the first laser blast. The second one scorched her hull, but she was already gone, pushing the ship to the edge of its drive limits. Warp initialized. The stars stretched. The station vanished. They were free. For now. Mara leaned back, hands trembling. The child lay still in the pod, but her vitals were steady. Not improving, not crashing, just holding on. "All right, little star," she said softly. "Let's go find someone who hasn't given up on you yet." She had no plan, no backup, no safe harbor. But she had a ship. She had a fire in her heart. And she had a promise, spoken only to herself, and now to this strange, dying child. Whatever the galaxy thought this kid was, mistake, accident, threat, Mara didn't care. As long as that heart kept beating, the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The stars outside the Jenny Wren streaked past like silver rivers, but inside the ship, time moved slowly. Mara Jennings sat beside the child's pod, watching every flicker of light on the monitor. The girl's pulse was weak, but steady. Her body still burned with strange energy, shifting between stable and unstable like waves crashing in a storm. Mara had patched broken engines, survived ambushes, and smuggled goods past pirate lords. But this, keeping a half-alien child alive, was the hardest mission she'd ever taken. The ship's AI, an old unit with a dusty voice named Benny, warned her again and again. This child's physiology is beyond Terran science. You need a specialist. But specialists had already given up. That's why Mara didn't trust them anymore. She trusted her gut, and her gut told her the kid wasn't done fighting. After 2 jumps and 5 days of hiding in asteroid fields, Mara landed the Wren in the shadow of a red gas giant. Beneath its rings was a hidden outpost, outreach station, run by fringe medics, exiled thinkers, and one grumpy old man who had once been called the finest xenobiologist in the sector, Dr. Nix Wren. He lived alone now, bitter and drunk, but Mara had saved his life once years ago during a firefight on Targos Prime. He owed her. Mara dragged the pod into his lab and dropped it on the floor, cracking open a pack of strong Terran coffee. Nix looked up from his half-finished drink, narrowed his dark green eyes, and sighed. You brought me a problem, didn't you? Mara handed him a datapad full of scans. She's not a problem, she's a kid, and she's dying. He read in silence. His face changed from annoyed to confused to afraid. What is she? He whispered. Everything, Mara said, and no one will help her, so now it's your turn. Nix worked for hours. His hands shook from age and too much booze, but his mind stayed sharp. He ran tests, filtered her blood through ancient machines, and mapped her organs with scanners no hospital used anymore. Mara stood behind him, arms crossed, watching with tired eyes. Finally, he leaned back and cursed softly. Her cells are rewriting themselves constantly. They're not dying, they're adapting like she's trying to stabilize into something new, but no one gave her time. He looked up at Mara. She doesn't need healing. She needs help evolving. That night, Mara didn't sleep. She sat on the floor beside the pod, holding the child's hand through the glass. The girl didn't wake, but Mara talked to her anyway, told her stories of Earth, of fighting pirates, of sunsets over Luna Bay. She promised the girl wasn't alone, that she was wanted, that someone chose her. In the silence of the dark lab, something changed. A soft light shimmered around the pod. The girl's chest rose deeper, steadier. Her fingers twitched, not in pain this time, but in rhythm, as if grabbing hold of life. A new heartbeat echoed in the pod, deeper than before. Nix ran in, blinking. She's doing it, he said. She's stabilizing. Why? Mara asked, her voice shaking. He gave her a strange look. Maybe she just needed to believe someone wanted her to live. Outside the station, a sensor light blinked red. A patrol drone from Valtheris 9 had tracked their warp trail. A warning ping spread to nearby systems. The child wasn't just a forgotten patient anymore. She was a target. Something unknown. Something the galaxy might want to erase. Mara saw the alert and clenched her jaw. She looked at the sleeping child, then at her ship. She wasn't done running. Not yet. But now she wasn't just saving a life. She was protecting a secret the galaxy had never seen. Something powerful. Something beautiful. And someone had to fight for it. Mara stood tall, fire in her eyes. You're not dying, kid, she whispered. Not while I'm still breathing. The sky above Outreach Station turned blood red as the gas giant shifted, casting a deep glow through the windows of Nix's lab. Mara stood at the console, eyes locked on the flashing red alert. Valtheris 9's patrol drone had found them, and, worse, more were coming. The child's biosignature had been flagged as unstable hybrid threat, a dangerous mix of politics and fear. She was no longer just a sick girl. She was a potential weapon, or worse, a symbol of everything the High Councils feared, unity between rival species. Mara's jaw tightened as she watched the incoming ships on the map. 2 scouts now, but heavier ships were surely on the way. She moved fast, powering up the Jenny Wren, shouting orders to Nix to prep the pod for emergency transfer. Nyx, usually slow and sarcastic, moved with surprising speed. "You can't outrun a council fleet," he growled. "Not with that old bucket you fly." "Then I'll outthink them," Mara snapped, lifting the pod carefully into her arms. The child inside didn't stir, but her vitals were stronger. Her skin had changed again, now glowing faintly gold like a sun just starting to rise. Outside, the drones locked on. The first laser struck the outer shield of the station, sending a shudder through the floor. Mara didn't wait. She launched. The Jenny Wren burst from the bay like a shot, weaving through the asteroid belt as the two drones gave chase. Her fingers danced across the controls, dodging blasts and debris. The ship groaned under pressure, but held. Benny, the ship's AI, chimed in with dry humor. "We're outgunned, outclassed, and out of our minds." "Wouldn't be the first time," Mara muttered. A blast rocked the rear engines, damaging the right thruster. Smoke filled the cockpit. "Reroute power," she barked, "and prep the decoy pod." Benny blinked. "You're using the ghost shell?" "I'm betting they won't know which pod is real until it's too late." She released 2 pods into the void, one empty but carrying the child's fake signature, the other hidden beneath the Wren's hull in a special shielded compartment. The drones split up. One chased the decoy, the other stayed on her. Mara gritted her teeth and plunged the ship toward a nebula cloud, a swirling wall of gas and lightning that fried unshielded electronics and blinded scanners. Benny warned against it. "Statistically, our chance of survival drops to—" "Shut up and hold on," Mara growled. The ship screamed as it entered the storm. Electricity crackled across the hull. Lights flickered. The drone followed, but its sensors blinked in the chaos. Mara spun the Wren into a sharp dive, flipping behind an ion cluster, then turned sharply and released a burst mine. The blast shredded the drone's right wing, sending it spinning into the gas field. "That's one down," Mara breathed, hands shaking. She pulled out of the nebula, barely holding the ship together. Behind her, space was still glowing red with warning signals. But she'd bought time, a few hours maybe. She set a new course, deep into outlaw space. She knew people there. Some owed her, others hated her, but none of them trusted the council. The Wren limped forward, sparks dancing from her engine. Mara glanced back at the pod, her heart heavy and burning. The child's eyes were still closed, but her breathing was calm now. Her body looked stronger. Her skin shimmered with soft light. She wasn't fading anymore. She was changing, becoming something new. "You're tougher than all of them thought," Mara whispered. "And you're not alone." For the first time since they fled the station, she allowed herself to breathe. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy would not let this go. The girl represented everything they feared and everything they hoped could never happen. A child born of peace between enemies, surviving against all odds, protected by a species everyone always underestimated. Humanity didn't have the most ships, or the best tech, or the oldest wisdom. But they had something else: grit, stubbornness, heart. And this human, this ragged, wandering foster mom, was ready to fight the whole galaxy if that's what it took to protect one little life. The outlaw station known as Grave Point floated at the edge of dead space, far from the trade routes and law-bound systems. It was built into the shattered remains of an ancient moon, held together by rust, junk metal, and bad promises. Mara had been here before, back when she ran cargo for smugglers and dodged bounty hunters. She didn't like the place, but she needed somewhere to hide, refuel, and fix the Jenny Wren before more council ships caught up. The girl's pod was hidden beneath an encrypted cloak system, deep in the Wren's shielded core. Mara landed with sparks flying and the engine coughing like a dying beast. Dockmaster Grull, a giant insectoid with mechanical arms, met her at the hangar. "You again," he buzzed. "You break my station. You pay in blood." "You'll get your credits," Mara snapped, tossing him a chipped data stick. "And I need privacy." Grull narrowed his many eyes. "You in trouble?" "Always." He grunted and let her pass. Inside the ship, Mara checked the pod again. The child still didn't wake, but now faint lines of glowing energy ran across her skin, like veins of starlight. Nyx's words echoed in Mara's head. She's evolving. But into what? Mara didn't know. She only knew she had to protect her. Word had already spread. Whispers flew through the bars and back rooms of Gravepoint, of a human flying a broken freighter carrying a starborn child, the one the council had marked. It didn't take long before old contacts started showing up. First was Kira, a tall, battle-scarred woman with silver eyes and a coat full of weapons. She had once fought alongside Mara during a blockade run and owed her a life debt. They're offering rewards, Mara. Big ones. Dead or alive. And you're here to collect? Mara asked coldly. No, Kira said, sitting on a crate. I'm here to help you make it out. Then came Hux, a sharp-tongued Trogari pilot who hated the council more than anyone alive. He brought a stolen stealth drive and parts to patch the Wren's broken thrusters. You're doing something stupid, Jennings, he growled. But I like stupid. Together, they worked fast. Kira set up shield dampeners. Hux rewired the ship. Mara never left the girl's side. At night, she sat beside the pod, whispering, stories and songs from Earth. The child stirred now and then, her lips twitching, her fingers curling slightly. It was as if she could hear Mara's voice even in her sleep. But there was no time left. A bounty fleet had entered the system. The council had hired mercenaries now. Cold killers with no care for laws or truth. Gravepoint shook with fear. Dockmaster Grull warned Mara to leave. You're putting my station in danger. I didn't ask for this, she said, but I'm not handing her over. Grull stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. Then make it count. As the bounty ships closed in, Mara and her crew launched. The Jenny Wren soared out of the station, shields glowing, patched together but still flying. Kira manned the turret. Hux flew a decoy ship beside them. The child's pod was locked in a new chamber with triple encryption, guarded by every scrap of tech they had. The first wave hit hard, 3 fighters armed with pulse cannons. Kira shot down one, but the other 2 kept coming. Hux lured one, away before being blasted into a cloud of sparks. His final message was short. Worth it. Mara's eyes burned, but she didn't stop. She pushed the Wren through an asteroid belt, dancing between rocks and plasma mines. The last fighter clipped their wing, spinning them toward a dead planet below. They crashed hard, skidding across the dusty surface until the ship groaned to a stop. Alarms screamed, smoke filled the air, but the pod stayed intact. The girl was still alive. Mara staggered to her feet, grabbed her rifle, and looked at the rising dust outside. Another ship was landing, bigger, meaner. She had no backup, no escape, but she had one mission left. She stood in front of the pod, shoulders straight, heart pounding. If the galaxy wanted to take this child, they'd have to go through her first, and they would learn the hard way that nothing fights harder than a human with something to protect. The red sky of the dead planet shimmered as the bounty hunter's ship landed, heavy and loud, stirring up waves of dust that rolled across the broken terrain like smoke. Mara stood in front of the crashed Jenny Wren, sweat dripping down her face, one hand clutching her pulse rifle, the other pressed to a cracked rib. Her ship was burning behind her. Sparks popped. Panels fell. Inside, the girl still slept inside the reinforced pod, glowing faintly with that same quiet energy. Mara didn't care about the pain. She didn't care about the fear. What mattered was what came next. The bounty ship's door hissed open. 3 armored hunters stepped out, tall and covered in spiked armor that shimmered darkly under the strange sun. One of them, the leader, had a voice that sounded like ice grinding on steel. Step aside, human. That child doesn't belong to you. Mara didn't move. She's mine now, and I don't step aside for cowards hiding behind armor. The bounty hunter laughed and raised his weapon. We were ordered to bring her in, but if you want to make this hard, we'll be happy to end you first. They fired. Mara dove to the side, rolled, came up firing. Her first shot struck one hunter in the leg, sending him spinning with a scream. She ducked behind a rock outcrop, as lasers chewed into the ground around her. Her ribs screamed, but she gritted her teeth and kept moving. Kira's voice crackled over the comms. She had survived the crash too, and had taken position on a hill. "Got your back, Mara." A sniper bolt lit up the sky and slammed into the second bounty hunter's shoulder, throwing him backward. The leader roared and turned his attention to the hill. That gave Mara just enough time to rush forward. She leaped over a broken ridge and slammed into the leader's chest, knocking him down. They wrestled in the dirt, punching and choking, the sun blazing above them. His strength was brutal, inhuman, but Mara fought with the rage of someone who had nothing left to lose. She grabbed a broken metal rod and stabbed it into the weak joint in his armor. He screamed and she kicked him off. He reached for his gun, but she was already moving. She grabbed his weapon and fired point blank. The shot hit and he fell, smoking. Silence returned. Mara staggered back, gasping, covered in blood and dust. The third bounty hunter was trying to crawl away. Kira walked down the hill and finished. Mara didn't speak. She just turned and limped toward the ship. The pod's chamber had taken damage, wires sparked. The door was half melted from a stray blast, but inside the child was still there, her face peaceful, hands glowing. Except, her eyes were open. Slowly. Softly. She was awake. Mara dropped to her knees beside her. "Hey there, Star Girl. You picked a good time." The child blinked and reached out with her tiny hand, touching Mara's cheek. In that moment, Mara felt something deep and powerful move through her. Not words, not thoughts, but feelings. The child was scared, confused, but she knew Mara was her protector, and she was grateful. "I've got you," Mara whispered. "No one's taking you. Ever." Then the ground shook again. Not from engines this time, but from something bigger. Above them, a massive warship blotted out the sun. It wasn't a bounty hunter ship. It was Council military. The real threat had arrived. Dozens of fighters swarmed out like insects. Kira stared at the sky, wide-eyed. "We can't fight that, we're done." But Mara didn't flinch. She looked at the girl. The child's eyes glowed brighter now. Her body floated gently in the air. The pod had opened and energy flowed from her skin in waves of light. Mara felt the static rise, her hair lifting. The girl's power was waking up. "Can you protect us?" Mara asked softly. The child looked up at the sky, and for a moment the world held its breath. Then her hands rose and the sky itself changed. Fighters froze in the air. The warship trembled. Light bent around her like a shield. The girl had been asleep, silent, helpless, but now she was awake, and she was not helpless anymore. Mara stepped in front of her and lifted her rifle again. "Let them come," she growled. "We're ready." The sky cracked like glass as the Council warship above opened fire, unleashing a storm of red plasma beams that screamed down toward the desert floor. Mara stood still, her eyes locked on the firestorm falling from the sky. Any normal being would have run, ducked, panicked, but not her. Not the child standing beside her either. The girl's feet didn't even touch the ground anymore. She floated gently, wrapped in a soft light that shimmered like the edges of a dream. Her eyes, once scared, tired, empty, now glowed with a fierce golden fire. Mara didn't understand what the child was, not fully, but she knew this. She wasn't just powerful. She was meant for something more. The first blast struck, but it never touched them. A shield of pure light rippled out from the child's raised hand, humming with energy. The beam shattered against it and sprayed harmlessly into the sand. The second and third blasts hit the same way, blocked, swallowed, turned to sparks in the air. Then the girl raised both hands, and the world shifted. The sand beneath Mara's feet rose like water. Stones lifted, swirled, hovered. A strange wind pushed outward from the girl, and the fighters above began to drift backward, then shudder. One by one, their engines shut down. They floated uselessly, trapped in a silent field of invisible pressure. The warship shook, alarms flashing across its hull. Then a voice boomed through every speaker, every comm device, every ear. "Stand down," the voice ordered. "That child is property of the Galactic Council. You have no right to withhold her. Mara's hand tightened. On her rifle, she didn't reply. The girl instead looked up at the massive ship, and with one wave of her hand sent a pulse of gold light into the sky. The beam punched straight through the ship's shields. Lights on the hull dimmed, engines cut, the whole vessel tilted. Powerless quiet, then silence. It hovered, dead in the air, smoking. They'll send more, Kira whispered behind Mara, staring up in shock. Whole fleets, dreadnoughts. They won't stop. Mara didn't look away from the child. They can try. But the girl wasn't done. She floated higher now, arms glowing brighter, as if her own heartbeat had awakened something deeper. Symbols, strange, ancient ones, glowed on her skin, moving like tattoos written in light. She looked at the sky and whispered in a voice that echoed far louder than it should have, like it came from every corner of the universe at once. And then something answered. The sky above shimmered, and from far away, from deep in space, something came. A pulse of starlight, a presence older than warships, older than governments. It wasn't a ship. It was something alive, a being of energy, like a great silver whale made of galaxies and silence, slid into the orbit above the broken planet. It floated there, peaceful and massive, as if watching, waiting, and every council ship that had been on its way suddenly turned, fled, retreated. The council had seen enough. Whatever this child was, they feared it now. They feared her. Mara lowered her rifle slowly and looked at the child, floating gently, back to the ground now, her glow softening, her strength calming. The giant being above pulsed with warm light and began to drift away, disappearing into the stars. The moment passed. The wind returned. The world exhaled. The child stepped forward and placed her small hand in Mara's again. There was no fear in her eyes now. Only trust. Only love. Mara smiled through tears. Told you, she whispered, kneeling to wrap her arms around the girl. Nobody's giving up on you. Kira walked up, still stunned. We should go, she said, before the council gets bold again. Mara nodded. Let them come. She's not alone anymore. Together they climbed aboard what was left of the Jenny Wren. The ship groaned but responded. Kira worked the controls. The engines lit. They rose slowly into the sky, leaving behind the ashes of battle. As they broke through the cloud line, Mara turned back one last time, eyes narrowing. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The child had powers beyond reason, but what mattered more than her powers was that she had someone who believed in her, and that belief, that love, had already changed everything. Stars moved slowly past the window as the Jenny Wren drifted through open space, heading toward no fixed point but away from everything that had nearly destroyed them. Inside, silence filled the ship, the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. The girl sat near the viewport, legs crossed, golden eyes calm, watching the stars like they were old friends. Mara leaned back in the pilot's chair, a warm drink in her hand, muscles finally beginning to relax after what felt like weeks of running, fighting, surviving. The girl didn't say much, but she didn't need to. Her presence filled the ship, now like sunlight. No more hiding, no more fear. Kira walked in from the back, arms folded, eyes tired but curious. She had been quiet ever since the child's power woke up fully, ever since that thing in the stars answered. She's still changing, Kira said softly. Still growing. Mara nodded. Yeah, I know. And she did know. The girl wasn't done. Whatever gift she carried, whatever ancient force had chosen her, it hadn't finished its work. But for now, she was safe. They were safe. That was enough. What will you do with her? Kira asked after a pause. Mara didn't answer right. Away. She just looked at the child and smiled. Raise her, teach her, let her be a kid. Kira blinked. That's it? Mara shrugged. What else is there? A long moment passed. Then the girl stood up and walked over, climbing into Mara's lap like she'd done 100 times before, curling close, her small body warm and solid. She rested her head under Mara's chin, and Mara held her tight. She remembered the first time she saw her, scared, pale, too quiet. Now she was bright, still quiet, but no longer afraid. The ship hummed gently, engines pushing them through the dark. Behind them, the council licked its wounds. But they would be back. Mara knew it. They wouldn't forget what had happened. A child had turned off their ships. A foster mother had stood against an empire. That kind of story spreads fast, but Mara didn't care. Let them come. They'd just find the same thing they found last time. A human woman who refused to give up, and a little girl who was no longer helpless. They had something no army could fight. Love, faith, and the kind of stubborn heart only a parent could carry. Time passed, and they reached a quiet moon, far from known lanes. It wasn't much, but it had trees, soil, and water. They landed and built a small cabin. Not high-tech, but cozy. Mara planted vegetables. The girl learned to fish and fly a glider. Kira built a sensor net to watch the sky. Weeks turned into months. Sometimes the girl would glow without warning, or make things float, or speak in voices that weren't hers. But Mara never flinched. She just held her tighter. "You're still my kid," she always said. "Nothing's changing that." And slowly, the girl believed her. The nightmares stopped. The shadows in her eyes faded. One day, while drawing under a tree, the girl looked up and spoke clearly for the first time in days. "They called me a weapon," she said. Mara set down her tools and sat beside her. They were wrong. "What am I?" the girl asked. Mara took her hand. "You're mine. That's enough." And for the first time, the girl smiled. A real smile, not shy or scared, the kind of smile a kid gives when they know they're safe. Kira watched from a distance, shaking her head in amazement. "You're raising a star child," she whispered once to Mara. "You realize that?" Mara chuckled. "I'm raising a daughter." Word of what happened had spread across systems. Whispers of a human woman and a child who stopped a warship. Some believed it, some didn't. A few brave souls came searching, some seeking help, others with greed in their hearts. All of them left with new stories. None of them found weakness. One night, under a bright moon, the girl sat beside Mara on a blanket. "You saved me," she said softly. Mara looked up at the stars. "No, kiddo, you saved yourself. I just didn't walk away." And above them, stars blinked like a promise, as if the whole universe had seen what they'd done and would never forget.